Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. I just hope this finds you all well. For many, you'll have only seen me about 12 hours ago as I hosted Straight Talk. Keep Bob in your thoughts and certainly in your prayers. He's done himself an injury, unfortunately, on one of his eyes. Some have suggested he's already been one-eyed on topics, but I think he's been correctly eyed, if you will, on many, if not all, the topics that he discusses here in Family First. So yeah, keep him in your thoughts and prayers. But of course, you're here with me, Simon O'Connor, on solid ground this wonderful Tuesday morning. For those of you going, hold on, it's not 8 o'clock. I'm very conscious of that. We have changed the times. We are running different shows now. Where's my little button? Here we go. We're running different shows now every morning, which I think is quite exciting. So at 7:30 every weekday morning, Family First, the team, myself and Bob, will be fronting. The team are all behind us, providing, not literally behind me, that would be spooky. The team are providing a lot of insights, research to help us. But as I say, every morning from 7:30 a.m, you've got solid ground twice a week now. And then, of course, Bob with his daybreak show. He has been away yesterday, though, as I say, with that little injury. Know that if you are on social media, if you are on Facebook, if you are on YouTube, on the Family First pages, jump on and say hello. And this happens because we have amazing technology. So the wonderful Rosie, so I always know some familiar faces, but the great thing about these morning shows, as they continue to grow, actually, not in time, but as they continue to grow, names from all around the country and around the world, some familiar and some new. So welcome to you all, which actually, sadly, I'm sad to say this will, though, have to be my last show. I think that's it's a little bit sad because, you know, just things do change. As I say, Family First has grown, but I just feel this has to be my last show. It's just hard to get up in the morning. Of course, that's a joke. Because what day is it, people? What day is it? It's as the French would say, the Poisson d'Avril. It's the 1st of April. April Fools. There is no way, as I'm grabbing my little solid ground cup, there's no way that I'm leaving solid ground. Love the show, love engaging with you all, and very, very poor humour, which is my want, here on the 1st of April. So look, guys, there is no shortage, as always, of topics, and understandably, a lot has to focus on the Greens, but I'm actually going to focus a lot on the media response to the latest debacle unfolding with the Greens. That's not an April Fool's joke. In fact, that's probably the most serious thing that we all understand and know, is that we have a major problem with our media here in New Zealand. And actually, some of the latest stats, as I try to find them, here we go, just showing this is something that actually we talked about on the panel last night with Alfred Naro, Bruce Logan and Rodney Hyde, along with myself, is this Acumen Alderman Trust Barometer. I mean, look, there's many surveys out there, guys, but this is one that's been running for 20, maybe almost 30 plus years. But what you're seeing on the right-hand side of that biggest circle is basically New Zealand's trust of media continues to go down. It's lower. You're lower than the global average, and media trust is lower than trust of business, of the government even. I mean, you get that. Media are less trusted than the politicians. And all of this is important when we discuss how badly, because let's call it for what it is, the way that the media are dealing with the Benjamin Doyle situation is appalling. In fact, how they're treating a lot of those on the left is appalling. Not because they've been bad, it's just that they're actually been quite hypocritical in the way that they're offering and doing things. So to Bella, good morning. Simply Greens pointing out that the left wing, BHN is a title of a podcast, are saying that anyone who's critiquing the Green Party is defaming. And Simply Green, one of our wonderful followers here, is proud of Kiwis, and what's proud is, of course, that we just don't trust the media, which is, one of the reasons amongst many that we run this show. So look, a couple of things before we start. Because it's going to take a little bit to tease through what the media is and isn't doing. I thought this was one of the funnier announcements from government yesterday, and I can't help but wonder if it's sort of generated by sort of TikTok mentality, was the big announcement of the government alongside funding new ferries, which is good, by the way, ferries between Wellington and Picton, was a road code hotline. Now, don't get me wrong, I am the first to be annoyed by the plethora of road cones everywhere. Rach and I often talk about it. It's like, why are they all here for apparently nothing? But I just thought it was odd and funny as a political comment that so much focus, the big announcement, was a road code hotline. And I just think, unfortunately, that at times sums up New Zealand and political priorities. What should have been more of a priority, and I am not going to go down this rabbit hole, but more New Zealand police officers are going on, in inverted commas, private trips to China. These trips are paid for effectively by the Chinese government. The itinerary is set by the Chinese government. And nothing's been said. So actually, kudos, even though I'll throw some stones or bricks at media, a bouquet is due. In this case, coming through Stuff or the Post, is actually investigating this and exposing this. Because, guys, there is something seriously, seriously wrong when people from our security services, in this case the police, are going on these supposedly but not private trips, funded by another government. Okay, the Chinese or the Chinese communists are not taking janitors over to China. They are targeting our police with these all-paid trips. And the latest bit of news is coming out is that some of the police, the people organising this through our ethnic liaison teams, which probably won't surprise you, are in direct contact with the Chinese consulates, which is a no-no. So I just draw it to your attention. So this is a major problem with our security services, and something has to happen. So actually, I've written a letter to the Public Services Commissioner, along with my former IPAC chair, Louisa, and we are demanding more. Where's the accountability? Where's the minister on this? And certainly, where is more media attention? Where's the Public Service Commissioner? Where are the police commanders? Yeah, crazy. Anyway, the Greens, the gift which keeps on giving. I can't but take a compliment. Thank you. And Robert has, and thank you, Lynette. Robert has got, I think, a very prudent point as we start to delve into what's happening. So look, the big issue is this guy, Benjamin Doyle, but we've had another MP. This is Tamitha Paul. So Family First actually broke the story last week around her, I would describe as very poorly judged and idiotic comments around defunding the police. She wants all the police defunded. She says that actually police walking on the street upsets people. What else has she said? Oh, yes, the prisons are just full of innocent people, basically, or people who have only stolen $12. I mean, quote here, she lied effectively that, she's met someone in prison who's there because they stole $12 of groceries. Again, these are bald-face lies, very provocative, which I suspect is the whole point when you're a radical activist who's never had a proper job. But why she's now under fire is she went to some sort of music event in Wellington and supposedly DJ'd. I suppose that's what all the woke lefties do. You remember Jacinda Ardern used to do the same. And playing music again about bringing guns to a fight, threatening language effectively towards police, and again continuing to call for the defunding of police, which I think is completely ironic when we come to this little fella here. So this is Benjamin Doyle. He is the MP, I think, rightly under fire for his social media posts. And why I think it's hilarious in the darkest sense of the word, because here's Tamitha Paul, a Green MP, basically saying, I don't want police, we shouldn't be funding police, they make us all feel unsafe. But if you've been following any of the news, this guy has gone into hiding, and the Greens are claiming that it's so serious that he needs extra security. And why it is darkly funny, guys, is because the extra security is needed from the very people that his colleague, Tamitha Paul, wants to defund. So this is the absurdities, guys, within the absurdities, which are already happening with this story. As Shirley's noted, a big part of where the media is going is trying to say that he's been harassed and bullied, which, by the way, shouldn't be happening. Those who are sending threatening, nasty, aggressive messages, it's just not appropriate to him, regardless of what he has or has not done, because, of course, everything at the moment's alleged, but actually we should always be operating with decency. But the problem with this entire situation is just the absurdities and the hypocrisies within it, particularly within the media. So I'm not going to go into the details of what this guy has or has not been alleged to do, other than to say it's highly sexualized imagery and commentary. So the comments or the captions, again, highly sexualized, full of innuendo. Now, these in and of themselves are not criminal, but the interesting factor is, amongst many, I have to say, is it involves children, which really should put most people's backs up. Some are trying to say, well, it's his own children. I don't really think that makes much of a difference, to be honest. So highly sexualized innuendo and language to and involving children does raise people's ire. And on top of this, the account has had at least 50 or so images removed. It doesn't mean that, I really have only seen a couple that are floating around. That doesn't, again, prove guilt one way or another, but it's interesting. Nevertheless, and the other element which people have been pulling out from all of this is actually a prolific use by this Green Party MP of emojis. So those are those symbols that people use, like smiley faces and stuff. Well, he's using emojis which are well known and associated with the likes of child abuse. So this is serious stuff. Now, I'm no emoji expert. As I say, I use a thumbs up, I use a smiley face. But again, there's a whole array of elements here which are deeply, deeply disturbing. And as I noted in my Substack, there we go, gratuitous advertising that I wrote about this the other day. As it says there, the media are so woke, but they are not willing to be awake to this situation and story. And in fact, as I talked to you this morning, media, in my mind, are already trying to bury the story. They've barely touched on it. This is mainstream media, by the way. Obviously, Family First has touched on it. The platform RCR have touched on it. Some independent journalists have touched on it. But our mainstream media are running scared, effectively. And I think all of you will know that, of course, if this was... And we know this next statement, not just because we know it in our minds, but we know it from experience, that had this been a member of Parliament from any other political party, and particularly had it been from the centre-right, had this been an ACT or a National New Zealand First MP, even Labour, who was posting images of children with sexual innuendo or using emojis that have, again, are known by our security services as being signs or warnings of sexual proclivities and child abuse, all hell would break loose. Okay, all hell would break loose. We only have to think of examples where the media in New Zealand have gone nuts because someone supposedly used... You remember Posey Parker was adjusting her zip, I think. You might recall that. So Posey Parker is the woman who came to Albert Park. So she was adjusting her zip, and days of manic New Zealand media coverage that actually she was making secret signs to her followers. Now, again, I don't know if that's true or not. Personally, I think it was an absurd claim, but the media was all over that. And yet here we have a situation of an elected member of Parliament using emojis, which again, are associated with some pretty bad behaviour and nothing, absolutely nothing. The funny thing too about the media, and I always use funny in the secondary sense, is you had this from New Zealand media over the weekend, literally an article. This is not about the Green Party. This was just a general article about the use of emojis, which I don't quite understand the concept of incels. I think it's something to do with very, let's just say problematic, deeply problematic young men. but they are using these emojis to communicate and to get around, if you will, censorship. So media are talking about this in that context. This fellow is using emojis in a way that should disturb people. No comment. No comment. And as I say, the media's defence, and I'm actually going to put this up. This is from Audrey Young from the Herald, and actually her piece overall isn't too bad. She starts getting it right, and I'm not picking on Audrey because actually, if you read the whole article, she is pointing out there's lots of questions. But as I keep coming back to, what the MP's accused of is just that. It's accusations, they're alleged. He's disappeared for at least a week. That's political strategy, by the way, to hope things cool down. But this is what Audrey's saying. I hope you can read it. Calling people who are calling out what's happening cowardly warriors, I don't think is appropriate. They're not cowardly, actually. People like Ian Wishart, Annie O'Brien, and others have been very, very, well, we know who they are. They're putting their reputations on the line. The mainstream media, she says, are not jumping to conclusions, knowing that not every photo of a queer person kissing a child is something to be alarmed about. No one's saying, Audrey, that one photo is anything to be worried about. It's a bit odd, but, people are different. Most people would not kiss their child on the mouth, and most people wouldn't photograph it or have someone photograph it and then choose to put it on social media. But again, that's true. Different people do things differently, but this is not one thing. This is the first beginnings of the spin, guys, from media. This is not just a singular event. This is not a singular post. This is not just a singular use of emoji. This is repeated on top of wider behaviours which should concern people. The fact that, again, they're using the language that the Greens want you to, that queer people have children too. Well, yes, babies eat cake. No one's claiming anything different. Then she says that, the mainstream media doesn't mean they've asked questions. No, we don't believe you're actually asking questions because this is now up to day 4 or 5 and nothing's been said. And when there was the stand-up yesterday, it was a fawning apologetic approach. And everything that's coming out of the media, and you can begin to hear a bit of frustration in my voice, guys, the media have ignored this story. And then when they did reluctantly pick it up yesterday, all at the same time, by the way, okay, almost a cartel behaviour from Stuff and NZME and News Talk ZB, One News and others, almost all off the same hymn sheet, all of the mainstream media reporting this as a fight between New Zealand First and the Greens, positioning the Greens as victims. It's called gaslighting, by the way, where they actually turn away from the real victims and then turn the abusers or the people causing the trouble, in this case the Green Party, claiming it's all victimhood. No, I don't think the media have been asking the questions or appear to be working on it. As I say, they might need to even coordinate with lawyers. That's just, I think, guys, pathetic excuses coming from the media, and it's pathetic because the media have shown no restraint, absolutely no restraint. Fadu, thank you. Father, I think if you're referring, hopefully returning to Audrey Young's there rather than my own. And yeah, I agree with this. Look, this is the key point, and I know I might be going around in circles for some people, and I apologise. But look, the media have shown absolutely no restraint when it's come to other MPs' issues in their private life, in their relationships, with their behaviour, whether civil or criminally wrong, okay? It is just appalling. They have barreled in onto MPs with no mercy, again, whether alleged or otherwise. So you can think of course, the MP with the bed leg. The media showed no mercy whatsoever. I remember Aaron Gilmore, a National MP. Look, Nationals had a whole pile of people, so I'm not here trying to say that one political party has a monopoly on bad behaviour. The point that I want you guys to understand, if you wish to understand, because I can't force you, is how the media treat things differently. In this case, because he's from the inverted commas queer community, and I'm going to play you a clip from the Greens because this is where they go. Basically, he's exempt from critique. It's the same as what you see from the Māori Party. It seems that there are certain groups in New Zealand, maybe this is the key point, guys. There seems to be certain groups in New Zealand where the media gives you a free pass. It doesn't matter how abhorrent, problematic or questionable your behaviour is, you can't be questioned. In fact, I will play this clip now because you're going to hear from Chloe Swarbrick, and just look at her body language throughout. The arrogance is appalling, but listen to this video and you're going to see all the same tired excuses. And just remember, basically protecting someone whose behaviours are raising serious red flags and potential, let's stress that really carefully, potential and alleged child safeguarding issues. Take a listen.
So the posts in question are from prior to them being a Member of Parliament, and again, the account was a private account.
Were the posts appropriate, regardless of whether they're using that terminology, were the image of a child, is that appropriate?
You are, I think, trying to put this in quite an oversimplified frame. Again, the language that we're talking about, the posts of somebody from the rainbow community putting a picture out with their child on a private account, I think it is entirely appropriate that again, what we're talking about here is a member of the queer community using language that is absurd and irreverent and oftentimes used within the queer community. Context is critical. Sorry? I accept that there are words that are used in different ways by different people. What I'm telling you is that a member of the queer community. Sorry, if I may.
The queer community accepts in general vulgar, explicit language.
I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that minority communities oftentimes end up using language or co-opting language which can be considered to be slurs or otherwise by external groups in ways that are absurd and irreverent, and I believe that there is a level of social responsibility that we as members of Parliament and you all as members of the news media have with regard to not oversimplify this story. Sorry,
I won't play the whole thing because you've already got there a whole array of absurdities, and David has just put this up. He's dead right. They're defending the indefensible. In a strange way, guys, I think this might actually see the end potentially of the likes of Chloe Swarbrick as well. If things become as bad as some think they are, then Chloe, Maramo and others in the Greens are defending that, protecting that, and actually accessories to such behaviour. It's probably problematic. So, I mean, again, look at how the media and the Greens are spinning this. So we don't even have to talk about the person in question. Again, that remains all alleged. But just look at what the Greens say and how the media treats it. So the first line of defence is, well, it was on a private Instagram account. Well, that doesn't matter. It's completely irrelevant. First and foremost, when you're a member of Parliament, your entire life is your... yeah, sorry, I just saw this one pop up. I always get distracted by comments, but I thought this this nailed it. And as Charmaine notes too, and we'll come to this whole oversimplistic side. But, when you're a member of Parliament, there isn't anything that's private. Your whole life is public. That's why you're called a public servant or a public official. Or you're in the public realm. So that's absurd. And secondly, there's been plenty of examples of MPs who have done things in their private capacity or private realm and have been harassed and chased up by the media. Again, unrelentingly. I remember one MP, I won't name who they are, being literally chased through the halls of Parliament by a pack of journalists, like sharks chasing blood. For what is, compared to this, a relatively minor story, but no quarter was given. The second ridiculous statement from Chloe pontificating there was that, well, this was prior. This was done prior to being in Parliament. Again, you call BS on that. I think it was Di Landy, actually, the wonderful Di Landy posted yesterday that, if you were a murdering rapist in the past, that doesn't matter so long as you're not as an MP. Now, she's using absurdity there to illustrate the point. But what you are prior does affect current. It doesn't just, again, disappear. So, nuts. As I say, how many MPs have been hauled through the coals? As I say, Sam, because of allegations of a 16-year-old. Actually, true allegations, true statements, the use of a bedpost. Just think about what he went through week after week, and it continues to. So the Greens been perpetrators of that too, as in the narrative. So that was, if you will, private and prior. But I thought the kicker was her big thing in this case around the rainbow community is she said that they use absurd, irreverent, and language in context. Well, there's at least two things that come out of that. And it's just what I touched on earlier. What she's basically saying is if you are, and this is intersectionality, folks, if you ever want to understand cultural Marxism and how it manifests in intersectionality, there it is right in front of you, which is basically her saying some groups get a free pass. They're deemed to be such victims that they're allowed to do or say whatever they want without critique. Without critique. And that's what she's saying here. Because he's a member of the rainbow community, he's allowed to do, say, think whatever he wants. That's not how it works in a properly functioning society. She also talks about context. Well, I think most of us, and we can only phrase it as a rhetorical question, because she also says, well, he's part of a subgroup of the queer or rainbow community. Well, Chloe, here's a challenge for you. What is this subgroup that he identifies with within this wider rainbow community? And what is the context that all of us are missing? Because that's all that we expect the media to be asking, is just a bit more context. But instead, what we've seen is the MP disappear, and the usual go-to of the progressive left, which is to claim that they are the victims, to claim that there's death threats and so forth. Look, as I said earlier, there's no place for death threats, threats of violence and abuse of members of parliament. In fact, there's no room for that for any person in New Zealand. That should stop. But I can tell you, as someone who's had plenty of death threats in his time, they're not pleasant, but we don't use them as excuses to not actually engage with the public. So guys, this is deeply concerning. We will keep following it here. From my side particularly, it's more around how the media are hypocritically dealing with this. As I say, they are not dealing with this in a way they would with any other MP. You can think of many examples of other MPs, both on the left and the right, whose behaviour has been questionable or has just been seen as public interest, and the media have chased unrelentingly, and often actually correctly, to be honest. When you think of some of the scandals that national MPs were getting involved with, almost like time was while I was there. So think of your Andrew Falloons and Jake Bazants and others. The media, I would argue, rightly pursued a lot of that. But in this case, crickets. Absolute silence. And it's why, amongst other things, guys, we've got this trust problem developing in our media, because you can't trust them. I'm sad to say, you can't trust them. You've heard me say it before, it's not just what they choose to report, it's what they won't tell you. And I noticed last night, and I mentioned it to some colleagues, how the story that we've been talking about this morning, that the story is now sort of disappearing, that they're just not trying to report it at all. So it's pretty shocking. But it's also... Sorry, I've had too many thoughts at once. It's also why you end up with situations like this. So as we say, we have a terrible situation potentially developing, allegations that the media will not report in the same way that they've reported other situations, which is their job. Trust, as we say, is declining, and yet the legacy media, the mainstream media, are fighting to stay alive. So this is only a side note. You know, we've talked about the NZME takeovers by a guy called Jim Grennan. He's doing something perfectly normal and legal. The board of NZME is fighting tooth and nail, even pushing the shareholder meeting out now. Claims and counterclaims. The key takeaway for me is the woke legacy and mainstream media are fighting to survive. They are fighting to hold on to the bias and the hypocrisy which they've got used to. I think their time's coming to an end, actually, whether it's because there are takeovers from shareholders who have had enough, or actually it's the rise of new media, including what we do here in Family First, attempting to allow people to actually have different views and viewpoints. But the last thing I thought I'd share with you is actually a bouquet to Chris Luxon. So the Greens tried to drag him in yesterday into this debate around Benjamin Doyle, again trying to use the safety argument. Oh my God, there's been threats and violence. Again, no evidence has been proven. But, you know, let's be fair, as I keep saying, there's no place for it. But they're trying to drag the Prime Minister in as if this is actually an issue for the Prime Minister to deal with. It is not. It's an issue for this MP, Benjamin Doyle. to deal with, first and foremost, but he's run into hiding. And secondly, it's for the Greens to explain, which they won't. They're just blaming everybody else. But I thought Luxon nailed it yesterday, because the other thing the Greens try to do, while they talk about language and context, of course, they always try to force you and I and everyone else to follow their language around things. So they're playing with the pronouns of Doyle around this they, them, and I just loved Luxon's response. Actually, it was wonderful to see, for a change, that he just got straight to the point. You can read it there, and I thought it was brilliant and well overdue. Hey, look, a last couple of messages from me. As I said, I mentioned my Substack earlier. This was, again, just go to substack.com and look up my name, or On Point, which is what I call it, and you'll find that article where I talk about what the media is and is not doing around the Benjamin Doyle situation. I also define what woke is, because a number of people keep asking me. So it's called Woke But Not Awake. And again, it's talking about New Zealand's media, very woke and yet not awake when it comes to actually very serious allegations about a sitting MP. Crickets, we're not hearing anything. I'm not the only one who does blogs. Bob is amazing at writing, so he's done his around those surveys around media trust and so forth. In fact, we were talking about it last night, and he'll write more about this, I'm sure. 24% of New Zealanders, according to this survey, believe hostile actions are fine for activism. In other words, violence, attacking properties, people, online trolling. 24% of New Zealanders. So let that sink in. I mean, gosh, how does a society stand when almost a quarter think violence is appropriate? But yeah, Bob, look him up on Substack as well. I've also done an interview recently with my RCR hat on with Associate Professor Juliet Chevalier-Watts. She's a law academic from Waikato University, looking into church and charities, the taxing of churches and charities, and came out of it saying this is actually a really, really bad idea. So tune in to that, because, well, it's really good. And importantly, Family First is into its 20th year. It's the 19th birthday. There's Bob. I mean, he has been the mainstay. He is the man, if you will. But look, into the 20th year, and we just love your continued support. For any of you out there who, well, actually, I know, as I look at the names through the chat, many of you have been great supporters of Family First over the years in different ways. So thank you. But to all and any of you who would like to support the work that Bob does, myself and the rest of the team, jump onto the Family First website. So that's familyfirst.org.nz. All and every donation is welcome, because it enables us to do things like this every morning. And as I said, we are running shows now. We have got such a reach that Bob and I have decided that it is good to go every morning from 7:30, as with this morning. And as you can see there, Daybreak, which is Bob's show, every Monday, Wednesday and Friday. And I will be going a bit more in depth as we do on Solid Ground, and that we did this morning on a Tuesday and a Thursday, along with Political Playback. That's live here, 5 o'clock in the evening, every Thursday. And of course, Straight Talk, which I hosted last night, because as I started as well, Bob is not 100%. He's hurt one of his eyes, so he's resting up. So we keep him in our thoughts and prayers. But guys, lovely to join you. I will see you again on Thursday morning. Have a great rest of the day, and thanks for joining me here on Solid Ground.